wrong button. I didn't click the video button, so, oh, there you are, okay. Can you see us?
I just see your image. I don't have a dynamic picture. No.
Okay, just wait a second. Can you get it now?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
No?
It's okay.
Huh? Wait, we're trying to, there it is.
No.
Okay, you have it now?
Yep.
Okay, so, anyway, well, it's good evening for us. It's 7 o'clock p.m. here in Greece, and 7 p.m., yes, and this is my class, so let me introduce you to my class. This is Katerina, this is Jerry, this is Ilias, and this is Gedin, and Theodore, and Nicoleta. And my name is Mina, and we're doing a project on conspiracy theories and urban legends. And we're trying to approach it from a scientific point of view. So, and I've also asked a guest star in here from another class. She's from another class, but she's also a native speaker of English, so we can have some interaction. My students, they're not so fluent in English, so I'll be translating in the meantime. And this is Sophia. I don't know if you can see her.
Hi.
Anyway, so she'll be reading the questions. Sophia, do you want to come a little bit this way? Oh, she can't come into the web camera because we have our cameraman here. I didn't introduce the cameraman. That's George, our cameraman. Okay.
Well, I don't see my own image. Am I centered or?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. You're fine. You're fine. Okay. Okay. So anyway, Sophia will be reading the questions, and I'll be translating if they need any help to understand.
Okay, so the first question is, our project is about conspiracy theories and urban legends, and if there is any scientific truth behind them. One of the theories we investigated is chemtrails. Is it true that the trails we often see in the sky are chemtrails?
Are you talking about the trails that come from a jet airplane?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
This is I know this as contrail.
Oh.
C-O-N. And I think it refers to condensation. So that I know sometimes when you're driving a car, you'll see the car in front of you, and you'll see little droplets of water sometimes coming out of the exhaust pipe. So I think what you're seeing is the condensation of water vapor in the sky.
So I'll explain to them. Μας λέει ότι οι ουρές αυτές υπάρχουν δύο ώρες στα αγγλικά, το chemtrails και είναι τα contrails. Con είναι condensation που σημαίνει συμπίκνωση και είναι από υδρατμούς. Αυτό όπως μπορεί να συμβεί και με ένα αυτοκίνητο. Okay, so we're talking about contrails then.
I think so.
Okay, so anyway, so we go to question.
Then why are these trails so dense and last for hours? We have also seen trails that form shapes in the sky, for example, a crisscross pattern.
That I haven't seen, so I have no comment on that.
Okay.
The only ones I've seen are the ones that are parallel lines, sometimes 2, sometimes 4, depending on the number of jet engines. I've never seen the crisscross patterns, unless perhaps there were 2 different airplanes that crossed their paths, and then from the Earth, when we look up, we see the superposition of these 2 lines, like so. But I can't imagine how such a pattern could be created except by 2 independent vehicles.
Okay, I'll translate. Λέει ότι τα αεροπλάνα μπορεί να είναι 2 ή 3 αεροπλάνα που να πηγαίνουν παράλληλα και γι' αυτό αφήνουν τα ίχνη έτσι. Δεν μπορεί να φανταστεί, δεν τα έχει δει και δεν μπορεί να φανταστεί γιατί κάνουν τα σχέδια τα οποία έχουμε δει. Actually, personally, I've seen these, and it's not like I believe that these are chemtrails or contrails. But it's just as mysterious. The way the patterns that I've seen are strange. And anyway, so okay, question number 3.
Okay. In the course of our work, we watched videos on weather modification. We also learned about geoengineering and how it involves releasing particles of heavy metals into the atmosphere. They say the reason is to prevent climate change. Is it true? How does this work?
Yes. So there are some people that talk about geoengineering, and the idea is to try to change the reflectivity of the Earth's atmosphere by seeding the upper atmosphere with reflective particles. And in this way, to try to reduce the amount of radiation that is outside the visible. So, we want to manage the heat coming in and being trapped by the atmosphere. And so by tuning with the aid of these particles, we can change the amount of thermal energy entering the atmosphere without affecting the lighting, because of course we don't want to prevent ourselves from seeing anything.
Okay, I'll translate. Λέει ότι στην Ηλία-Πιπολή, θυμάσαι που είχαμε δει ότι κάποια σωματίδια τα ψεκάζουν, που ο σκοπός ήταν για να αντανακλούν την ακτινοβολία του ήλιου, να ξαναγυρνάει πίσω.
Ναι, αυτό δεν βάλει στο εργασία.
Α, μπράβο, ναι. Λοιπόν, και ο σκοπός που γίνεται αυτό είναι για να αποφεύγεται η θερμική ακτινοβολία και να προστατεύεται η αλλαγή του κλίματος που συμβαίνει, η υπερθέρμανση του πλανήτη. Actually, but there's a question that I would like to ask. Have they calculated, like, the how can I say, the set-off? I mean, what kind of a percentage of the radiation is actually being reflected, and whether this is comparable in terms of advantages to the fact that these particles eventually end up on the ground?
Well, this is what the big concern is. I think they can very easily not only calculate, but they can run experiments to show what happens if you disperse these particles in the air. You could have a light source and a photodetector, and so you can measure very accurately what the impact would be. But you've put your finger on the really difficult point, which is what are the unforeseen consequences of this? And the geoengineering is a geo-experiment. I mean, it's either really good or it's really bad, and it's not as though you could just run out there and then turn the system off on a moment's notice. So there is a lot of concern about the side effects and the unforeseen side effects.
So that would relate to, Sophia, you want to ask something? That would relate to the particles themselves. I mean, I think we saw in the videos that the particles are heavy metals. Because of reflectivity, but what kind of effects do these particles have on human health? Has that been monitored at all?
Well, definitely. They would know what the effects of these particles on human health are, but I think the proposal is that these particles are dispersed in the upper atmosphere and they don't come to the ground. But, if those assumptions are wrong, then we've got an issue.
Okay.
Όλα αυτά, ας πούμε, με τους πάγους στο Βόρειο Πόλο.
Δεν θα τα πούμε αυτά, ναι.
Αυτά, ας πούμε, τώρα είναι...
We're having a little conversation in Greek just for a second, so she wants to...
Αυτό που λέγανε ότι λιώνουν οι πάγοι και...
Λιώνουν οι πάγοι.
Ναι.
Αυτό τώρα είναι αποτέλεσμα...
αποτέλεσμα
πειραμάτων τέτοιου τύπου ή όντως είναι το φαινόμενο του θερμοκηπίου. Και αν είναι το φαινόμενο του θερμοκηπίου, μαζί με αυτά τα πειράματα που κάνουν στην αλλαγή, θα μπορούσε αυτό να προκαλέσει μια μόνιμη βλάβη στη δικιά μας ατμόσφαιρα?
So Sophia has an interesting question, and Elias here also, because we're all aware of the melting, the global warming and the melting of ice at with the two poles, and whether this is an effect of, is this caused by the greenhouse effect, the global warming, or is it caused by the experiments, and will the experiments further aggravate the situation?
So think the evidence is pretty clear that the change in global temperature is correlated with the global warming, and that's correlated to greenhouse effect. You can see the one-to-one correspondence between parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the average global temperature and so on. So the response is now how to reduce that impact, and the calculations indicate that by blocking some of the radiation that's coming in, we can move more closely to the balance that there was before.
Κάνοντας, ας πούμε, τέτοιες δοκιμές, παίζοντας έτσι, ώστε να ρυθμίσουμε εμείς οι ίδιοι τον καιρό,
Ναι.
δεν εντείνουμε.
Ναι. Είναι αυτό που έλεγε μάλλον προηγουμένως. And Sophia saying by us intervening and trying to modify the weather, it's like starting a vicious circle of further aggravating the situation, like in terms of the unpredictable.
Well, you know, the unpredictable is always there, but I think the idea is that the huge increase in carbon dioxide is correlated to the huge increase in human activity. So that if there's human activity, whether it's manufacturing, transportation, what have you, then you can argue that's already tampering with the global balance. So if we're going to put more carbon dioxide into the air, and we don't want to see a runaway temperature rise, then again, as humans, we will put something else into the air to try to mitigate the rise in temperature. So it's one human intervention to counteract another human
human
Ναι, αλλά
intervention.
έτσι δεν ξεκίνησε.
Ναι, κάτσε να το ρωτήσω κάτι άλλο. There's another thing I have to explain to the other students, and there's another thing that I want to ask you after we finish with the questions, which is about starting on the human intervention part, because I've read that you've done research work with batteries that would store energy from renewable energy sources. We've done a project on renewable energy sources. We have wind farms on the island, and solar farms are starting to pick up, and sorry, we just got an AVG notice here. The storage issue is a very important issue in order to make this the intermittent to mitigate the intermittency. But let me explain what we're talking about. Okay, μιλάμε εδώ πέρα ότι μας λέει ότι η αλλαγή του καιρού, η υπερθέρμανση του πλανήτη έχει προέλθει από το γεγονός ότι η ανθρώπινη δραστηριότητα τα τελευταία χρόνια έχει αυξηθεί πάρα πολύ λόγω των ορυκτών καυσίμων, δηλαδή το διοξείδιο του άνθρακα που βγαίνει από το πετρέλαιο, από τις βενζίνες, από τα αυτοκίνητα, από τα εργοστάσια. Αυτό δημιουργεί το φαινόμενο του θερμοκηπίου και ότι αυτά που γίνονται, οτιδήποτε γίνεται για να αντισταθμίσει. Είναι μια πάλι ανθρώπινη επέμβαση στο περιβάλλον για να μπορεί να αντισταθμίσει αυτά που έχουν ήδη γίνει τα προηγούμενα χρόνια. Θα προχωρήσουμε στην επόμενη ερώτηση και να τα αφήσουμε στο τέλος.
Ναι, κυρία.
Ναι, πες, ναι.
Μήπως μπορούμε να τον ρωτήσουμε πού υπάρχουν επιπλοκές με τους ψεκασμούς που κάνουν.
Αυτό ναι, είπε ότι δεν κάνουν, αλλά είπε, το πιο σημαντικό είναι ότι είπε ότι ρίχνουν κάποια σωματίδια τα οποία δεν φτάνουν μέχρι τη γη και τα οποία καταχρούν την ακτινοβολία. Αν όντως φτάνουν, οι επιπλοκές είναι ενδεχομένως σοβαρές. Λοιπόν, let me just check the question list. Okay, 4.
Okay. What is the effect of these particles in the atmosphere or on human health?
On human health.
What is the effect on human health? Oh, well, these particles are not designed to be in the atmosphere where we are breathing. These are designed to go in the distant upper atmosphere. Because, remember, this is trying to mitigate the greenhouse effect, which means you have to be in the very, very high atmosphere.
In the ionosphere.
Not compatible with us. We shouldn't be breathing this stuff.
It's in the ionosphere then?
It's way up there. I don't know exactly
Okay.
one, but it's certainly where we're not going to be breathing.
Okay. All right, now, another theory that we investigated was we focused mainly on two different conspiracy theories because of the fact that, well, actually I'm an electrical engineer, so I tried to give them the input, the technical input that was necessary. So especially for this one, is the HARP antenna array in Alaska. I don't know if you're aware of the system that emits telecommunications into the ionosphere.
Okay.
We're curious because it's a very it has a huge power rating in the terms of like 3 gigawatts, and whether this has any effect on weather modification, or it's even been said that it affects tectonic events, and because of the frequencies that it can emit, which even go into ELF, like extra low frequencies. So anyway, are you aware of these theories about HARP? No? Okay.
Sorry.
Perhaps we should go to a physicist for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and there's a last question. No, okay, so this would probably be for Dr. Eric Lander. I sent him an email as well, but I guess that he's too busy, he didn't reply, because we wanted a biologist's input on both of these theories, and I suppose he would be the most suitable person to talk about ELF waves and what kind of effects they have on humans. So anyway, if you are aware, if you know anything about this, no. Okay. So anyway, let me explain now. Λοιπόν, τώρα αφού κλείσαμε την συζήτηση, θα ρωτήσω για το θέμα με τις ανανεώσιμες πηγές ενέργειας. Ο καθηγητής έχει ασχοληθεί με την ανάπτυξη συστημάτων μπαταριών που αποθηκεύουν την αιωλική ενέργεια και την ηλιακή για να μπορούμε να χρησιμοποιήσουμε κατά τη διάρκεια της νύχτας, ας πούμε, που δεν υπάρχει ήλιος και άνεμος. Πες, Σοφία. Anyway, Sophia is kidding me about my obsession with renewable energy, because the first years that I was teaching at the school, and due to the fact that I did study this at college, at university, in electrical engineering, was with the renewable energy, with wind farms and solar energy. So anyway, so would you like to talk to us a bit about your work in the storage? I read something about molten salt. So is this your invention?
Yes. So you've correctly identified the weak point of renewable energy, that both the sun and the wind are intermittent. The sun, at least we know when it's supposed to be shining. Sometimes it doesn't, even in the middle of the day if there's clouds. But the wind, of course, is really random. And if we want to go to 100% renewable energy, we have to be able to deal with the intermittency, because people expect to have electricity. They don't want to be without electricity, certainly all night long, and so on. So the remedy, of course, is storage. And there are people that have proposed pumping water uphill and letting it fall back down, and so on. And that works, but it's geographically constrained. There are many places where that isn't practical. What would be an ideal solution would be a battery that could store electricity in greater abundance than is needed, and then you can draw on that electricity. But the problem is we have many batteries today, but none of them is cheap enough for this application. They're cheap enough for phones and for computers, but even for all electric cars, batteries are still far too expensive. So I started about 8 years ago thinking about this problem and invented something with the focus right from the beginning, that it would be cheap enough. Everybody else invents cool chemistry, and then they assume that manufacturing will draw the price down. But that's a bad assumption for the energy market. The price point is so low that you need to invent right from the beginning with cost in mind. So that's what I did. You could say a little bit bit of this and then I'll tell you about the
Okay. Αυτός λοιπόν έχει κάνει, είπε ότι το πρόβλημα που υπάρχει στις ανανεώσιμες είναι ότι δεν είναι συνεχής η τροφοδοσία της ενέργειας. Δηλαδή, τι θα γίνει αυτό που σας έλεγα προηγουμένως, τι θα γίνει όταν δεν έχει ήλιο και δεν έχει άνεμο. Και ο σκοπός είναι να δημιουργηθούν μπαταρίες, οι οποίες να είναι αρκετά...
Και τι θα γίνει, αφού τώρα μας έλεγε ότι κάνουν αλλαγές μόνοι τους στο κλίμα.
Ναι,
θα
καλά.
δημιουργούν ήδη.
Άλλο αυτό. Λοιπόν, θα πούμε ότι λέμε ότι οι μπαταρίες αυτές πρέπει να έχουν αρκετή ισχύ και να είναι και αρκετά φτηνές για να μπορούν να αποθηκεύουν την ενέργεια και το κόστος να είναι συμφέρον. Και αυτές επινόησε έναν τρόπο με λιωμένο αλάτι. Μπαταρίες με λιωμένο αλάτι.
Για όταν θα χαθεί ο ήλιος.
Ναι, δηλαδή η ενέργεια που αποθηκεύεται όταν είναι όλη μέρα έχει ήλιο, η ενέργεια αυτή να μπορεί να αποθηκευτεί, χρησιμοποιούν και από τον άνεμο χρησιμοποιούν λιωμένο αλάτι. Τώρα θα μας πει στη συνέχεια πώς γίνεται αυτό.
Το θέμα είναι να μην χαλάνε οι μπαταρίες της ώρα.
Ναι, δεν είναι μπαταρίες κλασικές αυτές. Τώρα θα μας πει είναι ανακάλυψη. Δεν είναι μπαταρίες, είναι αυτές που βάζουν στο κινητό ή στην μπαταρία.
Αν έχει ασχοληθεί καθόλου για το project του Προδίτη που υποστηρίζει ότι μπορούμε να ζήσουμε καθαρά με τεχνολογικά μέσα, χωρίς λεφτά.
Ωραία, θα το ρωτήσουμε. Okay, so I just explained, and we're picking up more questions on the way, but I don't know how much time you have available. Just give us a time
I
frame.
can go for about another 15 minutes.
Oh, that's fine.
So actually, I gave a talk at the TED conference, and so I will send you the link. And my understanding is that it's been translated into many languages.
I think I'll have a look at that.
I would be surprised if that talk has a Greek soundtrack or Greek subtitles. So then that gives the background of the invention, and it explains what we call liquid metal battery. It has 3 layers: light, low density liquid metal on top, and a high density different metal on bottom, and in between is molten salt. And the battery discharges by alloying the top metal into the bottom metal, and then on charging we reconstitute the top metal by pulling it out of the bottom metal.
So what is the role of the salt in this process?
The salt is the electrolyte.
Oh, I
because
see.
These are
I see.
high temperature,
That's right.
so we can't use an acid or base. It's not aqueous. So these batteries operate at 500 degrees Celsius, and they have a round-trip efficiency of over 70%. That even accounts for the energy that you need to keep the battery operating at temperature. Its round trip is 70%, which is comparable to the pumped water. So it looks very promising.
Okay. Do you believe that if this technology is advanced enough for it to become cost-effective and to be able to be applied on a wide scale, would that mean that renewable energy would be able to replace conventional energy sources like fossil fuels? Would it be able to develop to such a large scale?
It depends on the location, but certainly in the island market, there's no question you could go 100% renewable. Now, it depends on the climate because, if you're going to have wind, it depends on how much wind you get and so on. But the level of penetration of renewables could go very, very high. Because now, renewables can't go much farther because their intermittency makes them a problem. They're not a solution right now because when they stop generating electricity, the public expects another generator to jump in. So that means now you have the double cost because you have to have the wind or the solar plus the backup.
The backup.
Could be diesel, it could be natural gas. So if you're going to buy diesel, then just buy the diesel. Why are you buying 2? And so the costs become very, very high. But there are many locations where the renewables with storage could meet all the needs.
Because let me explain to the rest of the class. Μας λέει ότι σε περιοχές, σε νησιά δηλαδή, όπως είμαστε εμείς, θα μπορούσε κάλλιστα να χρησιμοποιηθεί οι ανανεώσιμες να χρησιμοποιηθούν για να καλύψουν τις ανάγκες του νησιού.
Ανεμογεννήτριες.
Οι ανεμογεννήτριες, ναι, το πρόβλημα είναι ότι επειδή δεν λειτουργούν συνέχεια, δεν μπορούν να παρέχουν συνέχεια ενέργεια, θα χρειαστεί κάποια στιγμή να πάμε σε φεδρικά συστήματα. Οπότε λέει ότι άμα είναι να έχεις την εγκατάσταση, την ανανεώσιμη και μετά να έχεις από πίσω να είναι σε ετοιμότητα και μια κατάσταση η οποία να είναι με συμβατικά καύσιμα, τότε είναι διπλό κόστος. Οπότε δηλαδή γι' αυτό η έρευνά του είναι στο να βρεθούν τρόποι άλλοι εναλλακτικοί για να μπορεί να γίνει η αποθήκευση της ενέργειας. Και φυσικά εννοείται ότι εξαρτάται από το κλίμα, από την περιοχή δηλαδή που είσαι. Δηλαδή εδώ που είμαστε εμείς μπορεί να γίνει αυτό ενδεχομένως. Σε κάποια άλλη περιοχή δεν μπορεί να γίνει.
Όλα αυτά τα πειράματα που κάνουν στην αλλαγή του καιρού, αυτό θα μπορούσε να εφαρμοστεί σε παγκόσμιο επίπεδο?
Τι εννοείς δηλαδή?
Δηλαδή, ας πούμε, εάν είχαμε τελειοποιήσει τις αλλαγές του κλίματος, θέλαμε ανεμογεννήτριες, φτιάχναμε αέρα. Θέλαμε θερμοσύμβονες, φτιάχναμε ήλιο.
Θα του πω ότι είσαι και θεωρητικής κατεύθυνσης εσύ, και το βλέπεις από διαφορετική ματιά και παθαίνεις διαφορετικό. Sophia is, she's in her senior year of high school, and she's in literature discipline, and she sees this from a different viewpoint. So she's picking up on the weather modification discussion that we had. She took it a step further, which is like, okay, so if we need more wind and we need more sun, why don't we modify the weather in order to produce more wind and produce more sun, so that we can provide more, like to sort of like eliminate at the daytime intermittency.
Well, that's a good challenge. I haven't thought that we would attempt that. But this is geoengineering again, and this is not my field. But I think it's easier to handle reflectivity than it is to handle generating wind. But you know, if you try to tamper with something like wind at ground level, this is going to lead to a division of opinion, because some people think that unnatural wind may be also a not healthy way to disturb nature. Some people don't like wind, some people prefer. You know, we have a situation here in Massachusetts, down on Cape Cod, where there are 3 large wind generators, and the citizens have taken steps in the courts to have one of them closed because they don't like the noise. It makes a little bit of a humming sound, and people claim that they are becoming ill because of the constant low-frequency humming. So, you know, if we burn coal, there are health problems. If we put in the wind, some people claim there are health problems. So in the end, we are almost paralyzed. We can't do anything.
So you can't have everybody happy, in other words.
That's correct. That's correct. So now they propose to put, they have windmills in the sea, out of view.
Yeah.
And some people say, no, that's not right either. It's just there's, if you ask for public opinion, at some point someone will feel opposed, and you know, it's almost as though any single individual gets to pull the emergency brake on the train.
So it's hard to have a consensus on all of these.
You can't have a consensus. You can weigh all of the opinion, and then you make a decision based on the general interest. Some people will be unhappy, but what if the majority of people are well served? You know, we've come to a point now where it's not ruled by the majority, it is ruled by the minority. That leads to paralysis.
Exactly. That's the case. And actually, we're on a different level. We're experiencing this in Greece because I'm sure you're aware of the debt crisis in Greece, and we're living the impact of all this, and it's affecting our everyday lives. I had a 40% cut in my salary, and I'm considered lucky because I still have a salary because the unemployment rates are unbelievable, and the debt, instead of going down, it's going up. And well, it's driving us crazy, actually, here too.
Αλλά μας επιβάλλουν 60% αύξηση στη ΔΕΗ που είναι κρατική επιχείρηση, ενώ παράλληλα δεν μας αφήνουν να χρησιμοποιήσουμε ανανεώσιμες.
Oh,
Τις
yeah,
ανανεώσιμες
saying
πηγές
also about
πληρωνόμαστε.
τις πληρώνουμε.
Τις ανανεώσιμες πηγές πληρώνουμε και το γνωρίζω διότι έχει ο θείος μου.
Ναι, τις πληρώνουμε.
Αυτό λέμε, ότι δεν σε αφήνει το κράτος να μπορέσει να κάνεις μια λογική εγκατάσταση. Έχεις μια δεύτερη οψιόν. Εσύ, βρε αδερφέ, δεν θες ηλεκτρικό στο σπίτι σου. Δεν σε αφήνει να τα κρατικά συμφέροντα τόσο δυνατά που δεν
We're taking the discussion back to energy, because of the situation with the power system in Greece and the public power corporation, which is, even though on the one hand it's encouraging renewable energy investments, but it's charging the citizens actually for this expansion. They're being subsidized for like the PPC is buying from renewables at rates, at subsidized rates, and it's not fair because again it's the big people, it's the people way on top that are making all the money, and if for example a citizen, if I or Sophia, if someone decides to install a renewable system in our homes, well, apart from the fact it's probably going to take at least a year to have all the licenses, all the paperwork, the bureaucracy through. It's not the same situation for the people down at the bottom. So it's an imbalance, and our life is full of these kinds of imbalances.
It's the cost of installation in the electricity market. The generators want to shift the capital cost of the installation immediately to the ratepayer. So it's not as though they make an investment with their money, and then as they sell us electricity, they will recover their investment. They want the cost of the investment right at the beginning sent to the ratepayers, and so you get renewable energy at even higher cost. It's crazy.
So that's the same system is being applied over there too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's unbelievable. That's crazy. So,
well, different countries have different models. In Germany, there has been subsidized installation of renewable energy. In the United States, it's been uneven. And it varies from locality to locality. But it's really problematic because as the amount of renewable energy becomes a greater fraction of the total generating capacity, that intermittency becomes such a big headache that people have second thoughts about installing.
Another issue about intermittency that I remember is the compatibility of the energy that is produced by renewables with the grid, which is alternating current at specific like frequency and voltage and phases, and how this can be integrated with the grid and the harmonics and the waveforms that are not compatible with it, and they create a problem. So that's another issue that
Yes, you're absolutely right. It has to be high quality electricity, and the photovoltaics, of course, generate DC, and then you need inverters that can convert the DC low voltage to high voltage AC, and it has to be 50 hertz in Greece plus or minus less than 1%, or else all of your electronic devices will incur damage, even if you have electricity, but the frequencies migrates down to 49 or up to 51, you discover that your device doesn't work anymore. So that adds to the cost. When you think about installing photovoltaics, you have to consider not only the panels, but all of the electronic hardware to convert and make the electricity to specification, and that adds to the cost.
So, going back to the, so now, The way that you're approaching the problem is from a different perspective. Like, you're not talking about energy that's being fed into the grid. You're talking about with the batteries. You're talking about like independent plants that are individual plants that store the energy in batteries.
It could be both. There are many different uses for large-scale, cheap storage. So some of them could be on the grid. So for example, when you have even conventional electric power, say at 2 a.m., the demand is low, but you could continue to generate power and store it. And then in the afternoon, when the demand is high, you can draw that electricity from the battery, and that way put off the need to build another power plant, because the power plant has to be ready for peak.
Exactly, the peak.
And the peak is typically in a industrialized country about 40% above average. But it only happens about 1% of the time. So it's crazy you have 40% of your capacity sitting idle 99% of the time. If we had batteries, we could store the energy in the wee hours of the morning and thereby draw it in the peak hours of the day without having to build more capacity that sits around.
So it's like
It has many, many applications. And of course, the intermittency one is huge. Without dealing with the intermittency, the renewables don't represent a solution.
So it's like what you're designing is an on-demand system.
Exactly. You're designing what the term of art is dispatchable. We want dispatchable storage, and we don't have it. You know, renewables are not dispatchable. When the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, you have the choice to draw. But imagine there are days in Germany where the amount of electricity generated by the sun exceeds the demand. Well, supply has to balance demand. You're electrical engineer, you know this. The grid doesn't have any storage capability. If the demand is out of balance with the supply, the frequency migrates. So they literally have to shut down some of the photovoltaics. In Alaska, they have 80% of the time, the wind is blowing in the dark when the demand is low, and they literally decommission the wind. The turbines are decommissioned 80% of the time. This is nuts. So the storage has to be there for excess capacity for balancing load and supply. Otherwise, you will have low quality power. Can you imagine every time you go to plug in a device, it's like Russian roulette. You don't know if the device is going to work or if it's going to be fried. This is what we can have.
Okay, so let me explain, because we carried our time. Μας λέει ότι το μυστικό σε όλη αυτή την υπόθεση, ακόμα και με τα συμβατικά καύσιμα, είναι ότι σχεδιάζουν τα συστήματα οι μηχανικοί ώστε να μπορούν να καλύψουν και την αιχμή. Η αιχμή, για να σας δώσω ένα παράδειγμα να καταλάβετε, επειδή το είχαμε ασχοληθεί παλιότερα, η αιχμή της Κεφαλονιάς ήταν το 2007, ήταν 50 ΜΒ τον Αύγουστο και τόσοι ήταν τότε οι εγκαταστημένοι ισχύς ανεμογεννήτριες. Αλλά οι ανεμογεννήτριες και αυτά δεν είναι συνεχής παροχή ισχύως και υπάρχουν και προβλήματα με τις αρμονικές. Υπάρχουν δηλαδή περίπτωση να υπάρχει πρόβλημα από τη συχνότητα, υπάρχει συγκεκριμένη συχνότητα του δικτύου και άμα αλλάξει η συχνότητα μπορεί να δημιουργήσει προβλήματα στα κυκλώματα. Και οι συσκευές μπορεί να χαλάσουν ή να μην δουλέψουν, να χαλάσουν. Και μας λέει τώρα στο τέλος, το που είπε στο τέλος, πολύ ενδιαφέρον, ότι στην Αλάσκα το 80% της νύχτας, δηλαδή οι ώρες της νύχτας, φυσάει πάρα πολύ. Αλλά όμως εκείνη την ώρα, επειδή δεν υπάρχει κατανάλωση ενέργειας, όλοι κοιμούνται και δεν υπάρχει τρόπος αποθήκευσης, προκειμένου να μην διαταραχθεί, όχι μόνο να πάει χαμένη, προκειμένου να μην διαταραχθεί το σύστημα, είναι υποχρεωμένοι να απενεργοποιούν τις ανεμογεννήτριες. Γιατί άμα παράγουν όλη αυτή την ενέργεια, θα δημιουργήσουν πρόβλημα στο σύστημα, αφού δεν υπάρχει αποθήκευση. Και η πρόκληση.
Να ρωτήσουμε, κυρία, τι είναι ωφελημότερο, τα φωτοβολταϊκά ή οι ανεμογεννήτριες?
Να το ρωτήσουμε, αν και νομίζω θα μας πει ότι δεν είναι αυτό το αντικείμενό του, να το ρωτήσουμε. We have a question from the side that you can't see here behind me. And he's asking if you have any opinion on what is more beneficial to have, like wind energy or solar energy being developed.
It depends on the location. If in some places the cost of wind will be lower in the long run. In other places, if you have lots of sun, then solar is better. Some places are putting in both. It depends on the location.
Είναι όλα έχουν σχέση με τοποθεσία. Well, actually, πες.
Και τα δύο δεν είναι αναγκαία. Σε περίπτωση που δεν έχει αέρα, μπορεί
Ναι,
να
αλλά
τύχει
δεν είναι απαραίτητο να είναι. Δηλαδή, όταν δεν έχει αέρα, να έχει ήλιο. Δεν μπορεί, δηλαδή, πάντα πρέπει να προβλέψει την περίπτωση που δεν θα υπάρχει ούτε ήλιος ούτε αέρας.
Δύσκολο, κύριε αυτό.
Δεν είναι δύσκολο.
Ναι, όμως, κυρία, οι ηλιακές πλάκες για τους θερμοσύφωνες υπάρχει μια τεχνολογία που δουλεύουν ακόμα και στη συννεφιά.
Δουλεύουν
Ναι,
στη
άλλο
συννεφιά,
συννεφιά.
γιατί παρόλα αυτά παίρνουν ακτίνες από
Παίρνουν
τον
ακτίνες
ήλιο. Το
στον
γεγονός
ήλιο.
ότι έχει συννεφιά
Αλλά-
δεν σημαίνει ότι δεν έχει βγει ο ήλιος.
Ναι, αλλά το θέμα είναι η αποθήκευση. Άμα ο θερμοσύφωνας εσύ, άμα εσύ δηλαδή πάρεις τον ήλιο, δεν θα μείνει ζεστό μέχρι την άλλη μέρα το πρωί από τον ηλιακό. Άμα είναι χειμώνα, άμα είναι καλοκαίρι μπορεί να μείνει. Το χειμώνα δεν θα μείνει. Δηλαδή υπάρχουν
Δεν
απώλειες.
αποθηκεύεται.
Δεν αποθηκεύεται κάπου.
Ναι,
Με
αυτό
κατασκευή, αυτό λέμε.
Εγώ λέω για αυτό, αλλά σε για
Ναι,
τον
εσύ-
ήλιο, για το
εσύ
ρεύμα.
ναι,
Το ίδιο πρόβλημα
I just
έχουμε.
explained to Jerry that because he works with solar heaters. And there's a lot of solar heaters in Greece because it's we have so much sun that in the summer there's no reason to turn on either an electric or a gas-powered heating system for the water. And I just explained to him that it's like when you have hot water during the day, it's winter. Like today, it was a sunny day. There was hot water from the water heater from the solar heater, but it's not going to last until tomorrow morning because there's no there's losses. There's power losses, and there's no way to store that kind of energy. This is like the analogy, so that he can understand what's happening in terms of electricity. And what's interesting is here on the island, there's a house that. Because the Public Power Corporation, they were asking for this huge amount of money to bring the power supply to this person's home. And he decided he would go completely independent from the grid, and he built a solar panel. He built his own tracker, actually, which he operated with a motor from his, like it wasn't automatic, he would give the commands to move it according to the course of the sun. And he also had a wind generator, but like you said, because of the intermittency of both, he had a diesel generator standby in the background, so that he can have. And also, he had a very interesting system for air conditioning. He had a fan coil system, which would pump water, underground water, which was cool, and the temperature of the house in the summer was, he kept it at a constant around 27 degrees Celsius, which is very comfortable for the summer, and all this cost him just the installation and the maintenance. He said he was very happy with this. He was very, very happy with the installation. Okay, so anyway, as we're taking up too much of your time.
No, this is good, but I see I'm going to have to head off to a meeting very soon. So what I will do is I will send you the link to that talk, and I'm hoping that there is a Greek subtitle, or sometimes they even dub it into the other languages, and that will give you all the background. It runs only 15 minutes, and it will give you the whole story.
So anyway, TEDx talks are very popular in Greece too, so most of them are indeed subtitled. So, okay, we'll be looking forward to that. So, thank you very much for talking to us. It was a pleasure and an honor for us, and we'll be in touch by email. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.